So last semester we worked a lot with fiction text. So we worked with texts that were not, they weren't real. Now we're going to start looking at nonfiction texts, which they are going to give real information. So the author's purpose normally when we read an informative text or a nonfiction piece, it's normally to inform us, and normally they're not going to try and entertain us with it. Sometimes you might choose to read an informational text based on an interest you have. If you think the Grand Canyon's really neat and you want to go there someday, you might read an informational text about the Grand Canyon because you choose to, because you want to learn more about it, not necessarily because it's going to be, a story that's going to make you laugh. So there are several different features for nonfiction text that are different than what we saw in our fiction text. One of them is going to be text structure, which we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks, but I know that your lesson today touches on it. And there are also, where I'm getting ready to show you, lots of different features of text that we sometimes see that help us understand the information a little bit better that we're reading in a nonfiction piece. So the first one is a title page. So your title page is going to be right inside the cover of a book, and it's going to tell you the title of the book, and it's also going to give you some information on when it was published. So that's important because if you're reading about something that could change, so if you're reading about politics and you read a book and the copyright date, you can see it was published in 1960, well, it might still have really good information, but it's going to have changed a lot in the last 60 years. So it's important that publisher information and copyright information is important so that you know if your information is current. Another text feature you're going to see is the table of contents. So our nonfiction, like chapter books, are going to have a table of contents as well. What's important to remember about table of contents is they always come at the beginning of the book. And so if you pick up a nonfiction book and it's all about dogs and you want to look for a specific breed of dogs, then the table of contents might tell you, okay, Australian Shepherds. That's what I have. My Mackie boy is an Australian Shepherd. So if you're looking for Australian Shepherds, you can find it in the table of contents and it'll tell you which page to go to. Table of contents is in the front of the book. The index helps you find where things are in the book at the back. So your index is going to be in the back, and it's going to break everything down by subject. So if you're reading this book and you really want to learn more about cows, you can flip to the index and you can find, okay, there's going to be information on cows on pages 4, pages 6, and pages 33. That helps you quickly find information you need. Also at the back of the book is the glossary. As you're reading, there's going to be some vocabulary words that are going to be in bold, they might be underlined, and a lot of times they're going to be words that you might not know what they mean. You can go to the glossary, and they're going to be done in alphabetical order. You can find what those words mean. So if you're reading and you don't know what a frog is, you read and you're like, I don't know what that is. You can go to the back because you're going to be able to tell it's a vocabulary word because it's going to be bold or underlined. And you can read, oh, okay, a frog is an amphibian that lives in a wet habitat. I've got it. Another difference between fiction and nonfiction, and we have illustrations in fiction books. A lot of times they are illustrated. Somebody has drawn them. A lot of times in nonfiction, they're going to be photographs. You can tell these are both hands. This is a real hand. So a lot of what you see in nonfiction text will be photographs rather than illustrations. You also will see a lot of, my fingers are sticking together, a lot of timelines. So a timeline puts events in order. So you might be reading, like this one, you'd be reading about George Washington because it's a timeline of his life. Think about, we've looked at timelines for different wars we've learned about in social studies. They put everything in order. Notice the dates on the timeline. We start in 1732, we end in 1799. They go in chronological order. They don't mix the dates up. So this timeline, it's going to tell us George Washington's born. He married Martha. he was elected to president of the United States, and then he died. So that's going to give you information about significant events that happened in somebody's life or in history. Another important text feature are captions. So captions are going to be information under a photograph, and they're going to tell you more about it. So if you're reading a book and you see this photograph, the caption under it is going to tell you what you're looking at. It says Saturn is the 6th planet from the sun. Saturn has many rings of rock and ice that orbit the planet. So that gives you some more information about what you're reading. You also could see diagrams. Diagrams are going to show the parts of an object. And then these over here, there they tell you what it is. Those are called the labels. So we know that nonfiction text is different than fiction. It's going to give us information about a subject, and there are lots of different text features like we just looked at that help us to know what we're reading better and help us be able to comprehend the information.